This week, Venezuela was rocked by violent protests in which more than 100 people were injured. President Nicolas Maduro said an attempted coup by opposition leader Juan Guaido was put down. On Tuesday, Guaido, who claims to be Venezuela's legitimate president, announced the final phase of ending Maduro's rule and called on people to rise up against the government.
Today, brave soldiers, brave patriots, brave people are following our constitution and answering the call. Today, the armed forces are standing behind the people and the constitution. Heroes who are going to recover and rebuild Venezuela. That is what Venezuela needs today. Is that us or not?
By defeating this terrible coup attempt, we've returned to triumph, with truth, with loyalty, with honor.
The country's crisis will be discussed by Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov and U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo in Finland next week on the sidelines of the Arctic Council summit. Washington and Guaido deny plotting a military overthrow, with U.S. National Security Advisor John Bolton insisting it's an internal matter for the Venezuelan people.
We need Venezuela ruled by the people of Venezuela and not by external forces.
Mr. Bolton, who's done his damnedest to ensure regime change in Venezuela, whose country has championed regime change, sanctioned Venezuela, frozen billions in state funds, threatened it with invasion. Now they're saying no one should meddle, that it's up to Venezuelans to decide. Of course not. What he meant is no one but America.
All options remain on the table. We said that it would be a big mistake for Maduro and those supporting him to use force against innocent civilians.
Mr. Bolton's definition of innocent, I think, differs from the classic meaning. Look at these demonstrators with guns shooting at troops and police. I suppose their bullets are full of love, too. And if you dare hold these innocents accountable, says Mr. Bolton, we might invade. Between the lines.
Estamos con ustedes. We are with you. America will stand with you until freedom and democracy are restored. Vayan con Dios.
Today, interim President Juan Guaido announced the start of Operación Libertad. The U.S. government fully supports the Venezuelan people in their quest for freedom and democracy. Democracy cannot be defeated.
What do you know? They stand with the people. Never mind the sanctions and the misery for millions that they've caused. My question is, which people exactly did you say you stand with? The few hundred machete gun-wielding fellows that tried to stage a violent coup, or the thousands upon thousands who concurrently marched in support of the Venezuelan president, Maduro, against this coup?
This is clearly not a coup. We recognize Juan Guaido as the legitimate interim president of Venezuela. And just as it's not a coup when the President of the United States gives an order to the Department of Defense, it's not a coup for Juan Guaido to try and take command of the Venezuelan military.
You're on fire, Mr. Bolton. Juan Guaido, who was never elected, doesn't control the military or ministries or anything. He's the president. But Nicolas Maduro, the actual president, supported by millions, the military, the ministries, he's not the president. You see what I mean by strange? It's almost like they're bitter, in denial, like things didn't go according to plan.
While the U.S. objects to the term coup, the dictionary defines it as a sudden, violent, and illegal seizure of power from a government. Our guest debated whether or not that's being attempted in Venezuela.
The U.S. supports coup d'etats all the time. This is another example of that. Juan Guaido has no power under the Constitution of Venezuela. The fact the U.S. recognizes him is of no import. The U.S. recognizes him because he has already agreed to privatize Venezuela's oil in the interest of U.S. companies. That's why the U.S. recognizes him, and that does not make him legitimate.
The opinion of the United States is not the only opinion. All other 50 countries recognize Guaido as a legitimate president. 90% of Venezuelans do support also Guaido as their legitimate president.
This is an unfolding coup that the U.S. wants to push forward. And we have to remember, by the way, the U.S. supported the coup in 2002 against Hugo Chavez, and were reluctant to call it a coup back then. The fact that the U.S. wants to use semantics to cover up what it's doing doesn't change the fact that this is a coup.
When people say, you know, a seizure of power, illegal seizure of power, the basic definition of a coup, that's a key element there. It's not illegal because Juan Guaido has legitimate power recognized by the international community, overwhelmingly recognized by the international community and by the Venezuelan people, who goes out in masses.
People are on the streets supporting Maduro. That's undeniable. There are people there that support him. I have friends there, contacts that support him. You never hear their side of the story. You never hear from them in the press. And so you get one side of the story, and that is tantamount to misrepresenting the story.
The recent sanctions do not justify that decline in economy, basic economy. And the 3 million plus Venezuelans escaping Venezuela for other countries did not start when the sanctions started. They started way before that.
6 million people voted for Nicolas Maduro last May in a free and fair election that I observed. Do you know how many people voted for Juan Guaido? None.